Hello, this is Max of the Technomancer. Here continuing on with the video tutorial series on the Crossroads mod. In this episode we're going to get started on fluid, and probably finish fluid, steam, and converting and a lot of the things that make up this system, which I showed off in the first video. Now to get started with fluids, there is, of course, another measurement device. Why wouldn't there be? A fluid gauge. Now this is made like so, and if we use it on something, it's going to tell you how many internal tanks it has, something has, and and the percentage full it is. That's all it tells you. Now at this point, I'm going to show you that you don't need to have your inventory cluttered up with all of these devices, because if you combine all three of the measurement devices with a clock and a piece of bronze, you can combine them into one device, the omnimeter. And that performs all three functions and more. This is the final measurement device. It measures heat, it measures rotary stuff, measures gears, and you might, fluids. You might notice it's giving quite a bit of information none of the three devices gave. Things like the mass of a gear, the power, the exact type of fluid, the capacity, the exact amount, the biome temperature. This is a very good device, and it's going to be needed to measure certain things later on, including stuff on the magic system. So make sure you get one of these. Omnimeter. Yes. That's what I'm going to be using from now. For the rest of this series, probably. Now, fluid is moved by fluid tubes, which are just made of bronze. And if I place some tanks down, let me just put this in my offhand for convenience. Let me put some water in this tank, which you can just use the bucket on as normal. Put 2 buckets in. If I were not in creative mode, I would actually lose the liquid in the bucket, and then I can pull it out again. And now I was in creative mode, so I gained some. Let me just pull the last bit out. And there we go. Now it's empty. Oh, and I should mention that if I put liquid in this, and if I had a pickaxe, which would be helpful. If I break the tank, it will store the fluid in it. I can place it down elsewhere. Also, if I want to clear the tank, I can just put it in my crafting grid, and now it's empty. Now, Crossroads fluid tubes are very simple. They just average out the pressure of anything around any fluid containers they're connected to. Pressure is just how much is the percent full something is a fluid container is. So this is 0% full, this is 10% full, this is 20% full, and so on. They're going to average out their pressure with adjacent tubes and tanks and so on. It's pretty simple, actually, how they work. It's very simple. And if there is a machine that can only accept fluid, then they will fill that machine all the way. They'll completely ignore pressure when filling that machine. They'll just try and put as much fluid into something that can only accept as they can. And if there's a machine that can only output fluid, that can't accept it, then they will ignore pressure and just try to take as much fluid out of that machine as possible. So, yes. If I do this, that'll all balance out. So now we're going to talk about, let's just talk about the rotary pump. It's a very, very simple machine. It has an internal gear. I'm not going to go into the details. They're in the book. This is a very simple machine. You just provide it with rotary power, and it will attach to the top. Connect it up to like a tube or something. And if I power this, and then place a liquid source directly below it, literally here, then it'll suck it up and put it into any internal storage. It won't, for example, be able to suck this up and suck this up. It's now going quite slow because it's got low energy in the gear now. It can't suck this up. The source block needs to be directly below it. This makes it basically only useful, pretty much, for... It can suck up any liquid, but it's pretty much only useful for water, because you can do an infinite water source and just use it for water. And this is just filling up the tank with water, as you might imagine. It's very simple. Now, if we just place a rotary pump into this, we get a steam turbine. That would be this machine here. It's very simple. Now, we're going to start talking about steam now, which is actually a fairly simple to understand system. It's basically, well, the most complicated part of it is the boiler, and the boiler isn't very complicated. The tooltip explains a lot of it. This machine basically converts heat and water into steam. That's a very basic synopsis. You connect heat to the bottom, you connect the water input to the side, and you connect the steam output to the top. And I'm just going to do this. When this machine is above 100 degrees, still need that bucket. Let me just my inventory. While this machine is above 100 degrees, it will drain 5 degrees C per tick if there is some water in it. If there's no water in it, it won't drain any heat. However, even 1 millibucket of water will cause it to drain heat. You really don't need much. You know, let me use an insulated heat exchanger just to make it simpler while I'm still doing this manual for a demonstration. So it's heating up. It's not draining heat passively. The loss you're seeing is from this cable because there's no water in it. If I just put a tiny bit of water in, just a little, just break the tank immediately so not much escapes. There's very little water in there, and it's causing it to drain heat. So if this thing has at least 100 millibuckets of water, it's got space for 100 millibuckets of steam, and it's above 100 degrees C, then it'll use 5 degrees C per tick, consume 100 millibuckets of water per tick, and produce 100 millibuckets of steam per tick. So it turns water into steam 1-to-1. Now there is a caveat here, which is if I put my tank back and use normal water, it's going to produce steam just fine. But you'll notice that in the lower left, my ohmmeter is telling me it's got 2 out of 64 salt, which is, salt is, well, it's because I'm using normal water. Normal water is, I think of it as salt water. So if you were going to boil it in a boiler, you're going to fill your boiler up with salt. And as you can see, yep, it's almost hit 64 salt. And when it hits 64 salt, if I put water in it, it'll help heat up more. Oh, it's at 64 salt. As you can see, it's filling up with water. It's not turning water into steam anymore. It's too filled up with salt. Well, you can't actually remove... You can't really... Well, I mean, theoretically you can, but at this point you can't automate a steam boiler using normal water. The reason being, it'll just fill up with salt, and that's a problem. It'll stop running. You can remove salt with a hopper on the bottom. However, you need the heat cable on the bottom, and you can't really move hoppers and heat cables with pistons, so you can't automate this yet. And if I break it, they'll get the salt out. Salt does have some uses as well, but right now it's more of a nuisance than anything. So how do we automate this thing? Well, it has to do with that batch of steam we created, right? With the normal water, we've got steam. Well, let's look at its simplest use. If I put a steam turbine and I just connected up to a steam turbine, and let me not quite connect it up yet. I want to make sure there's a gear above it for demonstration. Let me get this. Yep. If I'm going to connect this to another tank. This is a horrible system I'm making here. This is just for demonstration. If I connect this up to a tube, I put steam in the bottom, and it'll produce rotary power. But distilled water is coming out. We're not getting normal water. We're getting distilled water because all the salt was boiled out of the water in the boiler. Now, if we use distilled water in a boiler, that's this stuff here, then it won't produce any salt, which means we can automate it if we use distilled water. And we can have a closed system. See, now it's not producing any salt when well, it's not actually running because it cooled down. Let's do that. Now it's not producing any salt, and this can produce steam. And if we if I connect this back, and I should have not have done this giant loop. This is ridiculously big. Does not need to be anywhere near this big. Now it's just looping back, and basically by providing heat down here, it's providing rotary power up here. So the basic process early game is have a manual boiler set up somewhere that you just run some normal water through, manually clear out the salt by just breaking the boiler and replacing it, get some distilled water. Use the distilled water in a closed system for a boiler, and that will work fine. Now there is a way later on, and not too much later on actually, we're pretty close, it's not too much later on at all actually, because once you've built one of these systems, you're pretty much well into Crossroads and you can start automating a lot of things. There is a way to automate producing distilled water and salt and en masse. We'll get to that soon. Ish. Probably not this video though. So yes, you get your distilled water. Salt does have its uses, and I'm just going to show a few of the gimmicks with salt. Besides the more important uses, which involves braziers and magic, you can also make it into blocks, which, well, they fall like sand. But if I just place some, you can literally salt the earth, which was sort of added as sort of a joke. It's sort of a joke feature, I'm going to be honest. More than anything else, it'll just slowly kill plants around it, and do quite quickly when you place it. Yeah, and it'll kill plants, turn the dead bushes. It'll slowly kill things around it as well after being placed. And also, there's several joke features with this salt blocks. I've technically classified creepers as a plant because of the whole creepers are peat moss thing. So yeah, you can make a creeper-proof floor if you want. Yeah. Anything else? Oh yes, everyone knows how salt kills slugs. That's basically what slimes are. So if you just no, get on the let me make a pad of salt. Hold on. Let me demonstrate what happens when a slime plant gets some of it. Get on. There we go. It kills the slime, shrivels it up into slime balls, and the bigger the slime, the more slime balls you get. So you could use this as a way to kill the slimes. Oh, wait a minute. Why did I get? There we go. Right. So, I mean, it's not hugely useful, but it's nice, I guess. We can craft it back into salt. There are definitely better uses for salt later on that we will get to, where it becomes actually quite an important material. But great, get away. So that's steam. So if we look over here, I've got a closed loop in this system of for the steam power, where we've got heat coming from this. Oh, I should explain something here. You might know if you're actually no, never mind. Okay. You might notice here. You might have now worked out how a large part of this system works. We've got a heat exchanger, which is being heated by lava below it. Now the cobblestone this is forming is being constantly broken by a drill, which we will show is powered by a moment. Now, this is heating. This machine here, heating crucible, which I have not explained yet, but if you're trying to do the sums here, you'll know you'll need to know it loses 1,000 degrees C per tick when above. Well, we'll get to this, but it's using heat. Now, this is heating a boiler, which has a loop with distilled water. Steam is coming up through here, turning a turbine, which is spinning powering these gears, and the steam is going, and the distilled water this produces is going back into the boiler. And this tank I just put here so I could bucket in distilled water, or to get this thing started. Now that gear rotary power being produced is turning that gear, which is breaking this block. It's also powering this grindstone, which is which can grind up copper ore into sand and copper dust. Right? Now this heat is heating this heating group. Now the bit I'm looking at right now, the bit currently on my screen, I have not explained. I have not explained this these orangish hoppers. I haven't explained the slotted chest. I haven't explained the fluid cooling chamber, and I haven't explained the heating crucible. So now I'm going to explain those things so you can see how this machine in front of me fully works. Let's start with the heating crucible. It's actually a pretty simple device. It's back to the heating system. It uses 10 degrees C per tick when above 1,000 degrees C, whether it's running or not, as long as it's above that temperature. And it's only got 2 recipes it can do. And it's part of the process for processing normal copper ore. So if we put some, it can turn copper dust into 200 millibuckets of molten copper, or cobblestone into 200 millibuckets of lava, both when above 1,000 degrees C. So you can melt down. Okay, that's why is that saying 200? Okay, so it appears that I've just found a bug. There is a small bug in the JEI integration where it is reading out the wrong number here. This should say 144 millibuckets. It produces 144 millibuckets of molten copper. I will correct this. My apologies. It is actually producing 144 millibuckets, just saying the wrong number here. Yes. It produces 200 millibuckets of lava, though. So 5 cobblestone makes a bucket of lava. So if I just put some cobblestone in this, you just hopper it in through the top. I can just put some in. It's filling up the thing. And if it gets above 1,000 degrees C, and of course there is a debug heat writer as well, because demonstration purposes, for example, I can just very quickly heat this up to 1,000 degrees C. And this should be melting. There we go, it's melting into lava, which we can remove with fluid tubes out the side. All right. Now, the lava can be very useful for production, but right now, let's look at this molten copper, which, like I said, this is actually producing 144 millibuckets. I will correct this. Now, the next stage, and the final stage in processing the copper ore into copper ingots, is putting this molten copper into a machine called the fluid cooling chamber, which I am looking at right now. It sort of looks like a little face, actually, come to think of it. So how do we use this fluid cooling chamber? Now, a fluid cooling chamber, I should mention, is just made like this. It used to require quite a lot of tin, but then I realized that tin is a very rare material in this mod, and that was a mistake, so I've changed it. And it can perform several recipes. 144 millibuckets of molten copper. That number was selected to match the Tinker's Construct number to a copper ingot. 1,000 millibuckets of lava to obsidian, or 1,000 millibuckets of water to ice. Or, and I missed a page, also, this recipe is for much later on in the mod. We will not get to that right now. or 1,000 millibuckets of distilled water to packed ice. This machine can make packed ice. That's significant. So you'll notice that these have a maximum temperature and a heat added. Now this machine needs to be kept cold. And different recipes have a different requirement for how cold. To make obsidian or copper, you just need to keep it below 1,000 degrees C. Not really that hard. To make ice or packed ice, you need to keep it well below 0, which is going to require, well, we're going to talk about how to do that at some point, because I haven't shown you yet, but it is definitely possible. So this machine, you input fluid into the side, items come out the bottom, and you connect a heat cable to the top, and every operation, it simply adds the amount of heat that it says here, and if it gets too hot, it will stop running. So in this, it's being fed the molten copper, and we're simply just venting the heat it produces into a heat exchanger, which is plenty to keep this thing cool. For producing copper ingots, you really don't need much. That's the heat exchanger when you do this. And that produces our copper ingots. I just fell in lava. Next comes the slotted chest, which is handy for item management and sorting. It goes along with the sorting hopper. This is basically a copper hopper, really. There's a convenient recipe here, which is just nicer to craft. And the slotted chest. Hold on, that's better. Now, if I get some items, let's say some andesites, birch, and some iron blocks, why not? Just random items that stack. We're going to look at the slotted chest. Now, this is a storage device which has the same size as a double chest, despite fitting in one block. And you can put multiple next to each other. So it's already much more compact, though rather expensive in wood. Taking this. However, it doesn't function like a normal chest internally. Watch what happens when I put this andesite in. So far so good, now I'm going to take it out. It reserved a slot for the andesite, and now if I try and put some birch in there, it's refusing to go in. I can put it over here, and not there. I can put it in this slot that's reserved for birch, but not in the slot that's reserved for andesite. Now if I try to shift-click an item in, it's going to go into a reserved slot. And if there is no reserved slot, it can't go in. Now you can clear a reserved slot by emptying the slot. It says 0. Now hold shift and left click it. And that clears it. Now I can't shift click anything in because none of these things have reserved slots. Now I can shift it's going to keep the slots reserved. Now this is already convenient for people who like to organize their items, their item storage. So it's like, oh, I've got these slots are for iron and this, so, and then they have to keep one item in each to show it. Well, now you can simply empty it out, and even shift click and it'll go into the right spot. However, it's more important with automation because let me just get a normal hopper to demonstrate. Automated item transfers respect the reserved slots. There's no reserved slot for andesite, so this can't insert it. If I reserve a slot for andesite, it is now allowed to insert andesite. Similarly, if I extract items with a hopper, it will leave a reserved slot behind. This means that you can use slotted chests as a filter mid-hopper. Now, this goes well with this device, the sorting hopper, which, for most intents and purposes, which unless you knew what you were looking for, and if you didn't know any better, you would think this just acted like a normal hopper because it acts in a very similar way to a normal hopper. But the book tells you what's different. The difference is subtle, and I'm not going to explain exactly how the difference works in code, but basically, well, let me demonstrate something here. Let's imagine I do this, and then I'm going to put a chest up top, right? Imagine I did this, and then I filter this one to only have iron, and I filter this one to only have wood. And I do this with normal hoppers. And I put, let's say, some iron in, and some wood in, and some andesite in. What's going to happen is, with vanilla hoppers, they're all going to end up in the bottom hopper. None went into here. Basically, it'll prioritize, when you do something like this with normal hoppers, it prioritizes moving the items down before inserting them. So these things get moved all the way to the bottom. However, if I do this with sorting hoppers, it'll end up prioritizing trying to insert them before moving them down the line. So we'll end up with all the iron in here, all the birch in here, and all the andesite in here. So we've just created an incredibly simple sorting system. So now I want to say, all right, this is my ingots chest. Oops, didn't mean to throw that. Which is got slots reserved for various ingots. Let's say this is my main base or something. This is my main system, and then let's say this is my dirt chest, which is reserved entirely for dirt. Sure, like that. I can just do that. And now I've got a bunch of junk I want to dump off. Then I dump off a bunch of junk in this hopper. And it'll sort itself all out, and then all the things that don't have a place to go will end in the bottom hopper. I should note that this won't work if you directly insert the items into this hopper. Some of them will end up down here. You should let this hopper extract items from the inventory above it at its own pace for this to work properly. This does have other applications besides just making your own sorting system for player access storage. For example, over here, we're sorting out the sand because this only allows sand in, and then the rest goes down here. Now, what if I wanted to use this to grind up something other than copper ore? Let's say I wanted to not have to build a second grindstone setup, and I just use this same grindstone to grind down. Wait, I took that in. Grind down some wheat into seeds because that's a grindstone recipe. Well, I'm going to do this, and we'll say the seeds go down here. Now, I'm not going to show you how to do it, but I think you can work out yourself. It's quite easy to change this section of the system so that instead you have a chest where all of everything that's not copper dust will go, including sand, and all the copper dust will go into here, and therefore you won't clog up this hopper by putting wheat in there. And that's one of the many simple improvements you can do to this system. So that's the slotted chest and sorting hopper. That's everything needed to produce the system in front of me. Now, let me show you something a little convenient. Let me get some cobblestone. This same system can be sort of, just for now, if I wanted to make some obsidian, let's say for some obsidian heat cables, if I just put some cobblestone in here, the same system will melt down the cobblestone and into lava and cool the lava into obsidian. So when this is done, it should end up giving me 2 obsidian. So, yes. You can try and think of ways to combine automated systems to be more efficient and make cheaper builds. Oops. Now, there's several helper items in Crossroads, just little tools to help you get started. One of them is the obsidian cutting kit. These little things. They're quite simple to make. 4 flint and a piece of obsidian will get you 4 of them. Now, do note that it takes obsidian to make these. Now, the idea is you know how it's very, very annoying to mine obsidian if you need a lot of it? You have to sit there for a long time just to get enough for a portal, even after you have a diamond pickaxe. These tools can help with that. Let me just place down some obsidian. Because once you've mined your first piece of obsidian, or produced it in a system like this, which is also a possibility somehow, you can, with that one piece of obsidian and some flint, produce 4 cutting kits. And if you right-click a cutting kit, an obsidian cutting kit on a piece of obsidian, it destroys the cutting kit and instantly mines the obsidian. This only works on obsidian. It does not mine anything else. And then I can use this obsidian and more flint to produce more cutting kits. And I can very quickly mine out a large amount of obsidian if I have a lot of flint. Very nice. There are some other little early game helper items that aren't Bobo items. For example, if I just, I'll get to some Bobo items as well, but I'm not going to spoil all of them. There's a single decorative block in the entirety of Crossroads, and it's this thing, the candle lily pad. It's just a decorative lily pad. It's well, it's sort of decorative. It's a lily pad that emits light. And this, the reason this is added is it's very standard to have a farm where you just have some plot of like a 5x5 wheat or something with water in the middle, and then to put a lily pad on top of the water so you don't fall in. And this will allow you to make that lily pad also emit light. So great. It's just very cheap as well. It's just a torch and a lily pad. Actually, let me leave the candle lily pad there. Now, this is a rather important device here. Well, it doesn't seem important, but it actually is. This is the brazier. You can make it very early game. It's just some andesite. And there's 3 things it can burn. Well, 4. But let me just put some coal/charcoal in it. Charcoal works, or coal. Sorry, coal doesn't work. What am I talking about? Yeah, only 3 things. I'm just being silly. Charcoal, and a piece of charcoal will burn for 5 minutes and just emit light level 15. It's not particularly useful. I guess it could be decorative. If you burn salt in this thing, which is a little weird, I know, but you can do this. 1 piece lasts for 5 minutes, and no witches will spawn within 64 blocks of a brazier burning salt. The reason this is added is that there are a lot of designs for mob traps, for overworld mob traps, that stopped working once they added witches naturally spawning. The reason being that witches can basically be only killed by a fall trap, as trying to kill them with fire or lava. They drink a fire resistance potion. They drink healing potions too fast for suffocation or drowning or cactus or many other designs. So because Crossroads is a mod about original and complicated forms of automation, I felt that witches spawning naturally kind of hampered creativity in the mob trap department and only limited you to basically fall traps. So if you automate salt production, which I'll show you how to do later on, and automate using a hopper to insert salt into a brazier, you can stop witches from spawning in your mob traps, and a brazier can store up to 64 of an item to burn at a time. Now the last thing this brazier can burn is Bobo item related. If I get my mysterious journal, I don't want to spoil the Bobo recipes and items. However, I am going to spoil 1 or 2, right? Just because they're somewhat... One of them I'm going to have to spoil just to demonstrate the general process for creating Bobo items. And I'm going to spoil one, and I'm going to spoil one of the hints. All Bobo items, almost all Bobo items that is, are produced at a brazier by burning a poisonous potato, because all of the Bobo items are illogical, so why not burn a poisonous potato? And this lasts for 5 minutes as well. We get several. And now if I throw 3 different items that fit a Bobo recipe near this, or on top of the brazier in fact, it will craft a Bobo item. And as I mentioned before, those things are teased in some of these sections. So if I go to one, for example, let me see if I can remember an entry that has one. Hold on. Heat machines, I think. Yes. Here we go. Here's a hint to a Bobo item there in bold. Now, if we go to the hint here, powder fire, raw bacon, flat brown-haired cloth, and fix with potato poison. Now, of course, these are designed to be. If you actually read the journal fully, you'll understand why they're so nonsensically written. It's sort of part of the joke and humor, and it also makes it's sort of a puzzle and a riddle. Now, I'm going to spoil this one just because I picked this one at random. just to demonstrate the process. That one would be leather, blaze powder, and a raw pork chop. And if I throw these things on top of the brazier, it strikes it with lightning and gives me a zombie pigman chess piece. Now, it's actually kind of a cool effect, and I picked it up too quickly to demonstrate it. To show the cool effect, I just want to redo that so I can show that. And I should note that this is real lightning. It can actually hurt you, and if you're not careful, kill you. And that item is immortal until picked up, so it won't get destroyed in the lightning or fire. So this is a pig zombie chess piece. And I'll demonstrate just what this one does, just as an example of some of the Bobo items. This one provides no protection of the normal sense, but it makes me fireproof. It doesn't kick in immediately, so if you're on low health, you'll still die, but it makes me fireproof. I can stand in lava and all that stuff. And it makes quite a lot of noise as it activates. It does have durability, which is decreased from being used for that, and you can repair it in an anvil with a poisonous potato. There are several pieces of Bobo armor, in fact. Chicken boots, cow leggings, and squid helmet. They all have their special thing they protect from. Zombie pigman chess pieces, fire. There's several other Bobo items. The Rod of Discord. Yes, you can see by the tooltip that it is a reference to Terraria. The magenta bread, the vacuum cleaner, the rain idol. Though the rain idol is sometimes can be disabled on servers because it allows weather control. Let's see. What else? There's the hamster wheel. That's later. That's a late game Bobo item though. And there is a Bobo feature with the where is it? There is a Bobo feature with these goggles where it's not actually a separate item where you can do something to these goggles to enable a Bobo feature on them. I won't spoil that, although I may have accidentally given a hint just now. So there's a lot of Bobo items, and they do all sorts of helpful, quirky things. So I thought I should make clear how you craft these things in case the hint on how you craft Bobo items in the introduction isn't clear. Because if you don't understand that riddle, then you won't be able to craft anything else of the Bobo stuff. Now there is another little helpful, another important device that's early game that I want to talk about for this video, and then which is the fertile soil. Now, as you can see, there's a lot of types of fertile soil here. Quite a few, in fact. And they're all crafted in the same sort of way. This is the let me just show. They take fermented spider eyes, bone meal, and dirt, and 3 of a certain plant to make 3 fertile soil. And there's many types. There's wheat, potato, carrot, beetroot, oak sapling, birch sapling, spruce sapling, jungle sapling, acacia sapling, and dark oak sapling. Now, if I plant some fertile soil, place some down. This is basically farmland. Now, plants planted on fertile soil cannot be trampled, and also you don't need water for plants on fertile soil. They'll grow as if they're hydrated, even if there's no water nearby. Now, why are there so? Now, if you notice, fertile soil was quite expensive with fermented spider eyes, and also there were many variants. Well, you might be noticing that plants are appearing. Not quickly, but they're appearing. These are wheat plants because this is wheat fertile soil. Fertile soil will slowly, well, I shouldn't be planting this for demonstration, will slowly generate the baby plants of the type it is. So if you were to try and make an automated farming machine, then using fertile soil will mean you don't need to replant. You don't need anything to replant. In vanilla, the only way to replant is with villagers, and then you end up with all identical auto farms in vanilla, which are all villager-based, and that's not very interesting. So now by solving the replanting problem with fertile soil, you can make all sorts of interesting variations. And of course, it's the same for beetroot. Fertile soil makes beetroot seeds, and so on. And so on and so forth. The sapling ones are a little bit different. Just a little bit. These are not slow. Every time they get a block update, they'll refresh the sapling. So these are very quick. And if you break the sapling, they'll replant instantly. So there is a reason for that. I'm not going to go into it, but basically the sapling ones replant instantly. Alright. So, next video I'm probably going to talk about a lot of the a lot of stuff, such as I'm probably going to... Oh, a fluid void. That's another Bobo item I failed to mention earlier, but I'm not going to talk about it right now. Probably going to talk about automated salt and distilled water production. I'm going to probably talk about the liquid fat system, which is exactly as disgusting as it sounds. I'm probably going to talk about item chutes as well. And we'll see what we have time for next video as well after that.